You pull your cotton cloak tighter around you, though the day is warm not for protection from the weather, but from the disease that seems to hang in the very air. Your grandmother lives or lived on the other side of the district, about a half-hour walk. You haven't seen her in over a week, not since the sickness really took hold in your neighborhood. Is she still alive? Still helping others with her traditional medicines? Or has Kokolistli claimed her too? The streets become more horrifying the further you walk. Outside some homes, bodies wrapped in simple cloths lie awaiting collection. No one comes to collect them anymore. There aren't enough healthy people left to keep up with the dead. A man sits in the dirt outside his home, rocking back and forth, keening quietly. His hands and tunic are stained with blood, his own or someone else's, you can't tell. You give him a wide berth, not out of callousness, but necessity. You can't help him. You can barely help your own mother. As you turn onto a wider street, you encounter a small procession of Spanish priests. They walk slowly, swinging censers that release clouds of heavy incense. One carries a cross held high, while another reads prayers from a leather-bound book. They're followed by a cart piled with bodies. The Spanish have their own methods for fighting the pestilence: prayers, processions, confession of sins. They believe the disease is God's punishment for wickedness. Some even say it's specifically targeting the indigenous people for clinging to their old beliefs. But you've seen plenty of Spanish colonists struck down too. The disease doesn't seem to care what gods anyone worships. You slip down a side street to avoid the procession. The Spanish have been allowing your grandmother to continue her healing work, pragmatism, winning out over religious fervor in the face of so much death. But it's still better to avoid attention. When you finally reach your grandmother's small home, your heart sinks. The door stands open, never a good sign. You approach cautiously, calling out, "Grandmother, it's Kitlai." No answer. The single room inside is dim after the bright morning sun. It takes a moment for your eyes to adjust. When they do, you see her, your grandmother, the respected healer, lying motionless on her sleeping mat. "No," you whisper, rushing to her side. "Grandmother, please." Her skin is cool to the touch. She's been dead for at least a day. The telltale signs of Kokolistli are their dried blood around her nose and mouth, the strange mottled discoloration of her skin. Even the healer couldn't heal herself. Grief hits you like a physical blow, buckling your knees. You sink to the ground beside her body, tears streaming down your face. Not just personal loss, though that's devastating enough, but the larger implications. Your grandmother was one of the few who knew the old remedies, the traditional medicines. She was teaching you, yes, but your training was far from complete. Without her, how many more will die? You allow yourself only a few minutes of grief. Your mother still needs you, still needs medicine. Wiping your tears, you look around the one-room home. Clay pots line the walls, each containing different herbs, roots, and powders. Bundles of dried plants hang from the ceiling. Your grandmother's healing tools: obsidian blades for bloodletting, bone needles for removing splinters, smooth stones for massager neatly arranged on a woven mat. A lifetime of knowledge sitting unused while people die outside. You begin gathering what you need for your mother's symptoms. Herbs for fever, to ease coughing, to slow bleeding. You work quickly but carefully, hearing your grandmother's voice in your memory. Too much willow bark causes stomach pain. Too little does nothing. The right amount eases fever. Medicine is balance. Sit lay. As you work, a shadow falls across the doorway. You turn startled. A Spanish man stands there. Not a soldier or priest, but one of their doctors. You recognize him vaguely. He's spoken with your grandmother before, curious about native remedies. "She's dead then," he says, his accent making the natal words sound strange. "I feared as much when she didn't come to the hospital yesterday." You nod, not trusting your voice. He crosses himself. "God rest her soul. She helped many, even if her methods were." He trails off, perhaps remembering he's speaking to her granddaughter. "What do you want?" You ask more sharply than intended. "The same as you, I imagine." "Medicines," he gestures to the pots and bundles. "This sickness. Our European remedies aren't working. Bloodletting, purging, prayer, nothing stops it. These won't stop it either," you say bitterly, holding up the bundle of herbs you've collected. "They only ease the suffering." "Even that would be something," he says quietly. At the hospital, we have nothing left to offer but comfort. The hospital, a concept the Spanish brought with them. A place where the sick are gathered together ostensibly for better care. Your grandmother thought it insanity putting the ill side by side, sharing the same air, the same water. Take what you need, you say, turning back to your task. I have to return to my mother. She's ill, he asks. You nod, not looking at him. Bring her to the hospital. We can know your voice is firm. She stays home with me. He doesn't argue further. Just begin selecting herbs and roots from your grandmother's stores. After a moment, he asks, do you know how to use these? Did she teach you? Some, you admit. Not everything. He hesitates. Then says, perhaps we could share knowledge. What you know of these native remedies. What I know of European medicine. You almost laugh. Share knowledge. After all the Spanish have done destroying your temples, banning your religious practices, treating your people like children to be converted or savages to be enslaved. But then you think of your mother burning with fever, of the man in the street covered in blood, and lost in grief of how many more will die in the coming weeks. Maybe you say non-committally, for now I need to go. With your bundle of medicine secure, you prepare to leave. The Spanish doctor steps aside, then says, my name is Diego. I'll be at the hospital near the central square if you change your mind. You nod once, then hurry past him, anxious to return to your mother. The journey home seems longer, the streets even more deserted than before. The sun beats down mercilessly, and you feel dizzy with grief, fear, and hunger. You haven't eaten since yesterday. When you finally reach home, you call out, Mother, I'm back. I have medicine. The only answer is the buzzing of flies. No, 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 no. You rush inside, dropping your precious bundle of herbs. Your mother lies exactly as you left her, but her chest no longer rises and falls. Her eyes stare sightlessly at the ceiling. You're too late. The world seems to tilt and blur around you. Everyone gone father dead years ago in a Spanish silver mine. Grandmother taken by Coccolistly, and now mother too. At 16, you're completely alone in a world coming apart at the seams. You sink to the floor beside your mother's body, too shocked even for tears. The disease is so fast, so merciless. She had been talking to you just hours ago. How long you sit there, you don't know. The light shifts, shadows lengthening as the day wears on. You should do something. Prepare her body for burial. Notify the death collectors. Something, but your limbs feel weighted with stone. Your mind frozen in grief. A sound at the doorway finally rouses you. Someone clearing their throat. Zitlai, a familiar voice. Elena, your neighbor, standing cautiously at the threshold. I saw you return hours ago. Is your mother? You nod wordlessly. Elena makes the sign of the cross, a gesture that still feels foreign to you despite years of Spanish rule. I'm sorry, child. So many gone. So many. She doesn't enter. No one enters a house of sickness unless they must. Instead, she asks, what will you do now? It's a good question. What can you do? Where can you go? Then you remember the bundle of herbs dropped and forgotten in your shock. Your grandmother's medicines. Her knowledge partially passed to you. I'll help others, you say, the decision forming as you speak it like my grandmother did. Use what she taught me. Eleanor looks doubtful. You're very young. Everyone experienced is dead or dying. You point out a harshness in your voice that surprises even you. Someone has to try. She doesn't argue, can't argue really, when what you've said is simple truth. Instead, she promises to send her son, one of the few in the neighborhood not yet sick, to help you bury your mother tomorrow. After she leaves, you finally find the strength to move. You close your mother's eyes, wash her face, arrange her limbs. The traditional errary rites are forbidden by the Spanish, but you whisper the old prayers anyway, asking the gods to guide her safely to the afterlife. Night falls. You should eat something, but food holds no appeal. Instead, you gather your grandmother's medical supplies, what you collected earlier, plus what little your mother had at home. You arrange them carefully, trying to remember everything you were taught about each plant, each remedy. It's not enough. You know that, but it's something. Sleep eventually claims you huddled on your mat in the corner, as far from your mother's body as the small home allows. You dream of rivers of blood, of mountains of corpses, of an entire world empty of human voices. You dream of your grandmother teaching you, her weathered hands guiding yours as you prepare picasses and teas. You dream of Spanish ships bringing invisible death to shores that had never known such sickness before. Morning comes as a mercy ending the nightmares. Helena's son appears as promised along with another neighbor. Together, you wrap your mother's body in her best blanket and carry her to the edge of the district where mass graves have been dug for the mounting dead. There's no proper ceremony. Too many bodies, too few priests, too little time. Just a quick prayer as she's laid in the earth alongside dozens of others, then covered with dirt. On your return, you find Diego, the Spanish doctor, waiting at your door. He looks even more haggarded than yesterday, his eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion. "Your mother?" he asks, though he must know the answer. "Gone, you say simply?" He nods, unsurprised. "I came to see if you've reconsidered about sharing knowledge." You study him skeptically. Why would a Spanish doctor want native remedies? "Don't you have your own medicines?" "Nothing that works against this," he says bluntly. "I've lost 40 patients in 3 days. European treatments seem useless. Even prayer fails us." His honesty is unexpected. The Spanish rarely admit weakness or ignorance, especially to the native people they've conquered. "What do you offer in return?" you ask. "I have little left to lose, but my knowledge is valuable." He seems taken aback by your directness, then smiles faintly. "Food protection being associated with a Spanish doctor has advantages, and my own medical knowledge for what it's worth." You consider his offer. The practical benefits are obvious. Food is becoming scarce, as fewer people are well enough to work the fields or bring goods to market. Protection matters in a city growing more desperate by the day. But there's something else. Something your grandmother believed, despite everything the Spanish had done. Knowledge deserves to be shared. Medicine is for everyone. Healing transcends the boundaries of culture and conquest. "I'll come to your hospital." You decide, but I work alongside you, not under you. "I'm not your servant." He agrees readily. Too readily. You can't quite trust his motives, but what choice do you have? The hospital is housed in a former palace near the city center. Once opulent, it's now crowded with the sick and dying. The smell hits you first blood, excrement rot, and beneath it all the heavy sweetness of incense, trying and failing to mask the stench of death. Pallets line the walls and crowd the floor, each holding a victim of the pestilence. Most show the same symptoms: high fever, headache, stomach pain, bleeding from various orifices. Spanish priests move among them, offering prayers and last rites. A few nuns tend to the sick, changing blood-soaked cloths, offering water, closing the eyes of the dead. Diego leads you to a small side room that serves as both storeroom and workspace. "We can prepare medicines here," he explains. "Tell me what you need." You begin working together, an unlikely partnership born of desperate times. You show him how to prepare a tea of willow bark and other herbs that reduces fever. He demonstrates a pus that helps ease the chest pain many sufferers experience. Neither of you has a cure. Nothing stops coccolystly once it takes hold. But your combined efforts bring comfort to the dying, and occasionally, surprisingly, someone survives. Days blend into weeks. The disease continues its rampage through Tenochtitlan and beyond. No one is counting anymore, but thousands upon thousands have died. Entire villages are empty. Fields lie untended. The great market that was once the heart of the city is a ghost town. You move into a small room at the hospital. Your home now empty and full of memories you can't bear to face. Your days are spent preparing medicines, tending to the sick, teaching what you know to the Spanish nuns who are willing to learn. It's exhausting, heartbreaking work. For every person who recovers, dozens die. Sometimes you wonder if you're making any difference at all. But then there are moments: a child's fever breaking, a mother able to return to her waiting family, an old man dying in less pain because of your herbal tea that remind you why you continue. One evening, as you and Diego work side by side preparing medicines, he asks, "Do you think it will ever end? This pestilence?" You look up from the herbs you're grinding into powder. All sicknesses end eventually. The question is, how many of us will be left? He nods grimly. The Spanish settlements to the north report the same disease, and south into lands we've barely explored. It's as if the entire world is dying. Not the entire world, you think. Just your world. The one that existed before European ships brought new gods, new weapons, and new diseases to shores that had never known them. You don't say this aloud. What would be the point? Instead, you ask, what causes it, do you think? The church says sin. The old ones say angry gods. What do you believe? Diego hesitates. As a Christian, I should say God's will. As a doctor, he glances around to ensure no priests are within earshot. I think perhaps something in the air or water. Something too small to see that passes from the sick to the healthy. It's a radical idea, one that contradicts both Spanish and native beliefs about disease, but it makes a certain kind of sense. If that's true, you say slowly. Then gathering the sick together like this, I know, he interrupts, it may spread the disease faster, But what alternative do we have? Leave them to die alone untended? He has no answer for that. Neither do you. As weeks turn to months, the tide of cocalisti begins to slow. Not because of any medicine or prayer, but simply because there are fewer people left to infect. Those who somehow resisted the disease or survived its ravages move cautiously through a transformed world. Where once Tenochtitlan held tens of thousands, now perhaps half that number remain. Fields lie out, homes stand empty. Both Spanish and native institutions struggle to maintain order in a world turned upside down. You continue your work at the hospital, though fewer patients arrive each day. Your knowledge of traditional medicine, combined with what you've learned from Diego and the Spanish doctors, has made you a respected healer despite your youth. The great pestilence cockalistly will eventually claim between 5 and 15 million lives across Mexico. It will be recorded as the deadliest epidemic in Mexican history. Researchers centuries later will suggest it might have been caused by a form of salmonella, though no one in your time has the knowledge to identify such things. All you know is that the world has changed irrevocably. The old ways are fading faster now with so many elders gone. The Spanish tighten their grip on a population too devastated to resist. And you walk between worlds using native plants with Spanish techniques, praying to old gods in new churches, finding a way to survive in this altered landscape, because that's what humans do in the face of pandemics. They adapt, they mourn, they rebuild, they remember, and they wonder as you do, while working late into the night preparing medicines for those still suffering. When will the next great pestilence come? And who will be left to tell its story? The world shifts again. Mexico City dissolves around you, centuries compressing like an accordion. You drift through darkness. Then light blooms and reality coalesces. Your name is Mikhail. You're a physician's assistant in Moscow, Russia. The year is 1771. You wake to the sound of distant shouting. Not unusual these days. The city has been simmering with tension for months now. The small room is frigid despite it being early September. Moscow autumns come early and without mercy. You pull the wool blanket tighter, not wanting to leave its relative warmth for the cold wooden floor. But duty calls. People are dying. With a sigh, you swing your legs over the edge of the narrow bed. Your quarters are sparse. A bed, a small table with a basin for washing, a trunk containing your few possessions. As a doctor's assistant, you live in a small room attached to the hospital, always on call, always available. Though hospital feels like too grand a word for what has become little more than a crowded morgue. The plague arrived in Moscow last year, sneaking in like a thief in the night. Some say it came with soldiers returning from war against the Ottoman Turks. Others blame merchants from the south. Whoever brought it, the result is the same death sweeping through the city like wildfire through dry timber. You dress quickly in your work clothes, simple wool trousers and shirt, a long coat that reaches your knees. No special protective garments like the doctors wear, no beaked mask filled with herbs, no leather gloves, no waxed cloths. Those are for the physicians. Assistants make do with what they have. The shouting outside grows louder. You move to the small window, wiping condensation from the glass. The street below is filling with people, not the usual morning traffic of workers and vendors, but an angry crowd. They carry torches despite the daylight and crude weapons, farm tools, sticks, a few swords. Not again, you mutter, your breath fogging the glass. The riots have been growing worse as the plague tightens its grip on Moscow. Last week, a mob attacked the Blagosenskaya hospital after rumors spread that patients were being strangled by doctors rather than treated. The week before that, a quarantine house was burned to the ground. The sick inside barely escaping with their lives. Fear does strange things to people, turns neighbors against each other, makes reasonable men believe unreasonable things. A knock at your door pulls you from these thoughts. Mikhail Ivanovich, it's Dr. Sharupov, the physician you assist. Are you awake? Yes, doctor, coming. You grab your satchel containing herbs, bandages, and the few medicines available to you and step into the hallway. Dr. Sharupov looks like he hasn't slept in days, which is probably true. His clothes are rumpled, his grey beard untrimmed, dark circles like bruises under his eyes. There's a situation, he says without preamble. The general hospital is turning away plague victims. They're being sent here instead. Your heart sinks. Your small hospital is already overcrowded, understaffed, undersupplied. How many? Dozens at least. Carts are already arriving. He runs a hand through his thinning hair. And there's another problem. Did you see the crowd outside? You nod. They're saying we're poisoning the wells, that doctors are spreading the plague deliberately. His voice is bitter, as if we don't have enough to do without inventing new ways to kill people. Such rumors have been circulating for weeks, that the plague is a foreign plot, that it's punishment from God for Moscow's sins, that doctors are its agents, not its opponents. What do we do, you ask? Our job, Dr. Sharapov says simply, for as long as we can come, they need us downstairs. The main ward of the hospital is chaos. Every bed is filled with additional pallets crowding the floor between them. The air is thick with the smell of sickness. Sweat, blood, excrement, the sweet rotting odor of infected buboes, and everywhere the sounds of suffering, moaning, crying. Prayers muttered through cracked lips, the rattling breaths of the dying. Orderly move between the sick, changing soiled bedding, offering water, removing bodies. Most wear cloths tied over their noses and mouths, though. Whether this offers any real protection is anyone's guess. Mikhail, one of the orderlies, waves you over. Need help here. You navigate through the crowded room to where a man lies writhing on a pallet. His neck is grotesquely swollen on one side, a boo, the telltale sign of plague. His face is flushed with fever, his eyes glassy and unfocused. Just brought in. The orderly explains family said symptoms started yesterday. Yesterday? That means he's in the early stages. Some survive this. Not many, but some. You kneel beside the pallet, opening your satchel. Can you hear me? You ask the man. His eyes roll toward you, struggling to focus. Water, he rasps. The orderly brings a cup, while you prepare a herbal tincture willow bark for fever, valerian to calm the agitation, a few other herbs that sometimes seem to help. It's not much, but it's something. Drink this first, you say, helping him lift his head. Then water. He swallows obediently, grimacing at the bitter taste. You follow it with water, which he gulps desperately. What's your name? You ask, checking his pulse, racing as expected. Fodor. His voice is slightly stronger after the water. Fyodor Knit, Mikhail Ivanovich. You introduce yourself. I'm going to help you. Fodor, it might be a lie. Probably is, but sometimes hope is the best medicine available. You examine the boo on his neck. Hot, swollen, painful to the touch. In the worst cases, these swellings grow to the size of apples, turning black before bursting and suurating. This one is still relatively small, which might be a good sign. We need to draw out the poison, you explain, preparing a pus of mustard, garlic, and onion a remedy. Dr. Sharapov learned from French physicians. This will be uncomfortable, but it may help. As you work applying the P2s to Fodor's swollen lymph node, you talk to distract him from the pain. Do you live nearby in Moscow Village 20 versus North? He manages. Came to sell furs. Started feeling ill at market. A familiar story. The plague doesn't care if you're a Moscow resident or a visitor. Rich or poor, young or old. It takes all comers. My family, Fodor says suddenly, his hand gripping your wrist with surprising strength. My wife, children, they were with me. Your stomach drops. At the market, he nods weakly. Where are they now? You ask, though you dread the answer. Don't know. His eyes fill with tears. We were separated when I collapsed. The crowd, everyone was running, afraid of contagion. The thought of a woman and children alone in plague-stricken Moscow, possibly infected themselves, makes your chest tight with worry. But there's nothing you can do. The city is too large, the chaos too complete. Rest now, you tell Fodor, finishing with the pus. Save your strength. I'll ask about your family. But you both know it's an empty promise. In this overwhelmed hospital with new victims arriving by the hour, no one has time to search for missing families. The day progresses in a blur of similar scenes. More patients arriving, more picuses applied, more tinctures administered, more comfort offered to the dying. You work alongside Dr. Sharapov and the other assistants, moving from bed to bed without rest. By midday, the shouting outside has grown louder. Occasionally something crashes against the hospital walls, rocks or debris thrown by the growing mob. They're getting bolder, one of the orderlies mutters as you work together, changing the soiled bedding of an unconscious patient. Yesterday they just shouted. Today they're throwing things. Tomorrow you don't want to think about tomorrow. About what happens if the mob decides to enter the hospital, rather than just threaten it from outside. A crash of breaking glass answers that question sooner than expected. Someone has thrown a rock through one of the windows. Shards of glass rain down on a row of pallets, causing cries of alarm from patients able to make noise. Get something to board that up, Dr. Sharpov orders, seemingly unruffled by the escalation quickly before they throw something worse. You help an orderly nail planks over the broken window, acutely aware of the angry voices just outside. What do they want? Do they really believe doctors are causing the plague, or is this just fear and grief? Finding a convenient target. As if reading your thoughts, Dr. Sharapov says quietly, they need someone to blame, something they can fight. An invisible enemy is too frightening, so they blame us instead, you say. Hammer pausing mid-swing, he nods. It's happened before. During the Black Death, they blamed Jews. In Rome, Christians always someone. You finish boarding up the window in silence, contemplating this cycle of blame that seems as persistent as the plague itself. By evening, the hospital quiets somewhat. Not because patients are recovering, most aren't, but because many have died. Their bodies removed to carts outside for mass burial. New arrivals have slowed, though. Whether that's due to the mob outside or just the lateness of the hour, you can't say. You check on Fodor again. His fever burns hotter, his breathing more labored. The boo on his neck has grown despite the pus. Not a good sign. My family, he murmurs when he sees you. His thoughts still fixed on his lost wife and children. I asked, you lie gently. No one has seen them, but that could be good news. Maybe they left the city, went back to your village. He doesn't look convinced, but nods weakly. Water, he whispers. As you help him drink, Dr. Sharapov appears at your side. Mikhail, a word. You follow him to a quieter corner of the ward, though quiet is relative in this place of suffering. The mob is growing, he says without preamble. The police are outnumbered. There's talk they might storm the hospital tonight. Your mouth goes dry. What do we do? He looks older than his 60 years in this moment. The weight of responsibility bowing his shoulders. Those who can walk should leave. Find shelter elsewhere. As for the rest, he doesn't finish the thought. We can't abandon them, you protest. We can't save them if we're dead, he counters, his voice gentle but firm. Sometimes retreat is the wiser course. You know he's right, but it doesn't make the decision any easier. These people came to you for help. To leave them feels like the worst kind of betrayal. I'll stay, you hear yourself saying. Help those who can walk to leave, then come back for the others if there's time. Dr. Sharapov studies your face, then nods slowly. I thought you might say that. Very well. I'll organize the evacuation of those able to move. You prepare the others just in case we can return for them. The next hour passes in controlled chaos. Patients who can walk or even crawl are helped out a back entrance directed toward other hospitals or makeshift shelters. Orderly carry some of the less severely ill. Dr. Sharapov moves through it all with calm efficiency, directing, reassuring, never showing the fear he must feel. You remain with those too sick to be moved. About 20 patients, including Fodor. You go from bed to bed, offering water, adjusting picuses, whispering reassurances you're not sure you believe yourself. Outside, the mob's shouts grow louder, punctuated by the crash of objects against the building. The few remaining orderlies exchange nervous glances. One by one, they make excuses to step outside, not returning. Soon it's just you and the dying. They're coming, aren't they? F. Theodore asks when you check on him again. His voice is weaker, but his eyes are surprisingly clear. You see no point in lying. Yes, but help will come too. The authorities won't let this happen. Even as you say it, you wonder if it's true. The plague has strained Moscow to breaking point. Food is scarce. A third of the population has died or fled. The police are overwhelmed. The military focused on maintaining quarantine boundaries rather than keeping order within them. You should go, Fodor says, surprising you. Save yourself. The selflessness of it, this dying man concerned for your safety, brings a lump to your throat. I'll stay a while longer, you say. Rest now. The crash of the front door being forced open ends any further discussion. The mob has breached the hospital. Your heart pounds as you hear them moving through the building, shouting, breaking things. They'll reach the ward any moment. A strange calm settles over you. You've seen so much death these past months. Held the hands of the dying, closed the eyes of the dead. Perhaps your turn has come. There are worse ways to go than trying to help others. The ward door bursts open. A dozen men pour in, faces contorted with anger and fear. They carry torches, clubs, farm implements turned to weapons. Behind them, more crowd in the hallway, peering into the ward with a mixture of rage and horror. There he is, someone shouts, pointing at you. One of the poisoners. I'm a doctor's assistant, you say, keeping your voice steady. I'm trying to help these people, liar, another voice calls. You're spreading the plague, killing good Russians. Look around you. You gesture to the patients. These are your neighbors, your fellow Muscovites. They need help, not violence. A big man with a blacksmith's build steps forward, a heavy hammer in his hand. My wife died 3 days ago. My children are sick. The doctors did nothing. We're doing everything we can, you say, hearing the inadequacy of the words even as you speak them. There's no cure for plague. We can only try to ease suffering. Enough talk, someone shouts from the back. Burn it down. Burn it all down. The mood shifts palpably. Individual grief and anger coalescing into mob mentality. You've seen it before during food riots earlier in the summer. Once it takes hold, there's no reasoning with it. If you burn this place, you try one last time. You're killing these people yourselves. Is that what you want to become, murderers? A moment of hesitation ripples through the crowd. Some look uncertain, glancing at the patients on their pallets. Others grip their weapons tighter, unmoved. The blacksmith steps closer, hammer raised. Maybe we should just kill the doctor instead. Make an example. This is it. You think your last moment. Stop. The voice booms from the doorway with the authority of a cannon shot. The crowd parts, revealing a figure in the elaborate uniform of a senior police official. What is the meaning of this? He demands, striding into the ward. Behind him, a dozen armed police officers file in, hands on their weapons. The crowd's energy shifts again, uncertainty replacing bloodlust. The blacksmith lowers his hammer slightly. This man is spreading the plague, someone finally says, pointing at you. All the doctors are there poisoning the wells. The police official looks at you, then surveys the ward full of suffering patients. Does this look like poisoning to you? He asks the crowd. Or does it look like men and women sick with plague being cared for by medical staff? No one answers. Moscow is under martial law by order of the Empress Catherine herself, the official continues. Rioting is punishable by imprisonment or death. Return to your homes immediately or face the consequences. The threat hangs in the air. For a moment you think the crowd might still turn violent. There are more of them than police, after all. But slowly, reluctantly, they begin to disperse. The blacksmith gives you one last hate-filled glare before following the others out. When they're gone, you slump against the nearest wall, knees suddenly weak with relief. Thank you, you manage to say to the police official. Another minute and he cuts you off with a curt nod. Where is Dr. Sherapov? Evacuating patients who could walk. He should return soon. The official frowns. We'll need to move these remaining patients as well. This hospital isn't safe anymore. The mob may return in greater numbers. He turns to his men, issuing orders for carts and stretchers. They're to be taken to the new quarantine facility outside the city walls, he explains. Purpose-built to house plague victims away from the general population. As preparations begin, you check on Fodor one last time. His breathing is shallow, his skin burning hot despite the cool cloths you've placed on his forehead. We're moving you, you tell him. To a safer place, his eyes flutter open, unfocused. My family, he whispers. We'll find them, you promise, knowing it's likely impossible, but unable to deny this small comfort to a dying man. The evacuation proceeds with military efficiency. Patients are carefully transferred to cots and stretchers. Police maintain a perimeter around the hospital, keeping the lingering crowd at bay. By midnight, the last patient has been removed. You stand in the empty ward, feeling an exhaustion so profound it seems to penetrate to your bones. The floor is littered with debris from the mob's brief occupation. Broken furniture, shattered medicine bottles, abandoned torches. Mikhail Ivanovich, Dr. Sherapov has returned, his face grim. You're alive. I feared the worst when I heard the mob had broken in. The police arrived just in time. You say all the patients have been evacuated. He nods, surveying the destruction. This was my father's hospital before mine. 30 years I've worked within these walls. His voice catches slightly. Now look at it. There's nothing to say to that. The plague has taken more than lives. It's taken security, certainty, the basic fabric of society. Come, Dr. Sherapov says after a moment. We're needed at the quarantine facility. Our work continues, even if the location changes. As you follow him out of the ruined hospital, you realize you've lost track of time. How long has the plague been in Moscow now? Months? A year? The days blend together in an endless procession of sickness and death. But it won't last forever. You know this from medical histories, from the teachings of physicians who have studied past outbreaks. Even the Black Death eventually receded. This plague too will run its course. The question is how many will be left when it's done. Already Moscow has lost perhaps a third of its population dead or fled to the countryside. Streets that should be crowded stand empty. Markets that should be bustling are silent. Churches fill with the desperate rather than the devout. Outside the city walls, the quarantine facility looms a sprawling complex of hastily constructed wooden buildings surrounded by a high fence. Guards stand at the entrance checking papers, ensuring only medical personnel and the sick enter. Inside, organized chaos reigns. Hundreds of patients lie on simple cots arranged in long rows. Doctors, assistants, and nuns move among them, doing what little they can with limited supplies and knowledge. You find Theodore easily enough. His cot is in the section for the most severely ill. His condition has worsened during the transport. The boo on his neck has darkened, and now similar swellings are visible under his arm. His breathing is labored, his consciousness fading. You sit beside him, taking his hand. There's nothing more to be done medically. All you can offer now is the comfort of human touch, the assurance that he won't die alone. "My family," he whispers, the words so faint you have to lean close to hear them. "They're safe." You lie gently. "They're waiting for you." A faint smile touches his lips. He believes you or chooses to. Either way, it brings him peace in his final moments. As the night deepens around the quarantine facility, as patients live and die under your care, you can't help but reflect on the strange continuity of human experience across the centuries. The plague in Athens, in Rome, in Constantinople, in London, and now in Moscow, different times, different places, but the same fundamental story. Sickness spreads. People die. Society strains and sometimes breaks. The survivors rebuild. Theodore's hand grows cold in yours. Another life claimed by the pestilence. You close his eyes gently, murmuring the Orthodox prayer for the dead. Then you move on to the next patient and the next, because that's what those who care for the sick have always done throughout history's worst pandemics. They continue. They persist. They bear witness to suffering and try, however imperfectly, to ease it. The Moscow plague will eventually claim between 50,000 and 100,000 lives before burning itself out. Remarkably, it will be the last major outbreak of bubonic plague in Europe, the disease that has haunted the continent for centuries, finally receding from its shores. But other pandemics will come in other times, in other places. And always there will be those who stay when others flee, who help when help seems hopeless, who remember that even in humanity's darkest hours, compassion remains our greatest strength and chest hope. As dawn breaks over the quarantine facility, bringing another day of struggle and loss, you take a moment to look eastward toward the rising sun. And you wonder, as humans always have in times of great calamity, what the future holds, what new challenges await, what lessons will be learned from this suffering, and which will be forgotten until the next great pandemic comes. The world shifts once more. Moscow fades away and you drift through darkness. Then light returns and you find yourself in a new time, a new place, a new life. Your name is Sarah. You're a nurse at Camp Devon's military hospital near Boston, Massachusetts. The year is 1918. You wake to the sound of coughing. Not just one person, many. A chorus of hacking, wheezing, and gasping that's become the soundtrack of your life these past few weeks. The narrow bed in the nurse's quarters cacks as you sit up, rubbing sleep from your eyes. Outside, dawn is just breaking, pale light filtering through the thin curtains. You've managed maybe 4 hours of sleep. It will have to be enough. Your uniform hangs on a hook by the door. The white dress, apron, and cap that mark you as one of the angels of mercy in this place of suffering. You dress mechanically, fingers working the familiar buttons, straightening the cap over your dark hair, which you've cut short for practicality. No time for breakfast. The night nurse will be desperate for relief, and there are too many patients, too few hands to help them. The hospital wasn't built for this. Camp Devon's was meant to train soldiers for the Great War raging in Europe, not to house thousands of the sick and dying. The medical facilities were designed for typical military injuries and illnesses, broken bones, training accidents, the occasional outbreak of measles or mumps. Not this. Not what people are calling the Spanish flu, though there's nothing Spanish about it except the newspapers that first reported it openly. Spain, neutral in the war, had no censorship restricting coverage of the disease. The United States, along with other warring nations, kept early reports quiet to maintain morale. Fat lot of good that did. The hallway outside the nurses' quarters is already busy orderlies pushing gurneys. Doctors conferring in low voices. Nurses rushing between wards with arms full of supplies. Everyone looks exhausted. Everyone's wearing a gauze mask over their nose and mouth. A flimsy barrier against an invisible enemy. Sarah. Dr. Reynolds waves you over, his voice muffled behind his mask. Thank God we've got 20 new cases since midnight. We're putting them in the recreation hall. The wards are full. 20. Your stomach drops. Military or civilian? Soldiers, mostly just back from the front. Probably picked it up on the transport ships. He runs a hand through his thinning hair. A gesture of frustration you've come to know well. The damn war ends, and now this. The war isn't officially over yet, but everyone knows it's just a matter of time. Germany is on the brink of surrender. American troops are returning home by the thousands, bringing the influenza with them. They'll head to the rec hall, you tell Dr. Reynolds. Has anyone relieved Nurse Wilson in Ward C? Nurse Patterson took over an hour ago. Wilson's down with it herself now. Another one. 3 nurses have fallen ill in the past week alone. 2 orderlies, 1 doctor. The flu doesn't care what uniform you wear. The recreation hall has been transformed overnight. The pool tables and card tables that once offered soldiers a few hours of distraction from training are gone, replaced by rows of cots. Most are already occupied. The air is thick with the sounds of labored breathing, coughing, occasional moans. Nurse Evans, a young orderly, practically a boy, hurries toward you. We've run out of clean sheets and the laundry can't keep up. Use blankets for now, you tell him, and see if any of the recovering patients in Ward A can be discharged. We need the beds. He nods and hurries off. You take a deep breath, steeling yourself for the day ahead, and begin moving from patient to patient. The first is a soldier, maybe 22. His face is flushed with fever, his breathing rapid and shallow. When you place a thermometer in his mouth, it reads 104 degree F. How long have you been sick? You ask, helping him sit up to drink some water. Started on the ship, he says between labored breaths. Thought it was just seasickness at first. Then the fever hit yesterday. Any family we should notify? He shakes his head slightly. Just my mother in Chicago. Don't worry her yet. I'll be fine in a few days. You don't contradict him. But you've seen how quickly this influenza progresses. How it starts like any other fluff fever, headache, body aches, then suddenly turns deadly. Patients who seem to be improving in the morning are gasping for breath by evening, their skin turning a dusky blue from lack of oxygen. The young ones are hit hardest. Unlike typical influenza, which usually claims the elderly and very young, this strain seems to prefer healthy adults in their 20s and 30s, the very people who should be most resistant. The theory, according to Dr. Reynolds, is that their strong immune systems actually work against them, overreacting to the virus, flooding the lungs with fluid in a desperate attempt to fight the infection. The resulting pneumonia drowns them from the inside out. You move on to the next patient and the next, taking temperatures, administering aspirin for fever, changing sweat-soaked bedding, helping those who can still swallow to take broth or water, noting which ones have developed the ominous blue tinge to their lips and fingertips. By mid-morning, 3 more cases arrive. By noon, another 5. The hospital administrators have stopped turning away civilian cases. There's nowhere else for them to go. The city hospitals are as overwhelmed as Camp Devon's. Miss, a weak voice calls out as you pass. Miss, please. You turn to see an older man, perhaps 50, reaching out a trembling hand. His lips are blue, his breathing labored. My wife, he gasps. Need to tell her? You kneel beside his cot, taking his hand. It's cold despite his fever. The fingernails blue-tinged. What's her name, sir? Where can we find her? Mary, 42 Elm Street. Each word is a struggle. Tell her I'm sorry for the fight. Tell her a coughing fit interrupts him. Violent spasms that bring up frothy blood-tinged sputum. You help him turn to his side so he doesn't aspirate, holding his shoulders as the coughing tears through his weakened body. When it finally subsides, he lies still, eyes closed, breath coming in short, irregular gasps. You check his pulse, rapid, thready. He doesn't have long. I'll tell her, you promise, though you have no idea if anyone will actually have time to deliver such a message. Try to rest now. His eyes flutter open briefly. Cold, he murmurs, so cold. You find an extra blanket and tuck it around him, knowing it won't help the bone-deep chill that comes with approaching death. Then you move on to the next patient and the next and the next. The day blurs into a procession of faces, symptoms, small kindnesses offered against overwhelming suffering. You barely notice when someone presses a sandwich into your hand, around what must be lunchtime. You eat mechanically, not tasting it, then return to your rounds. Late afternoon brings Dr. Morris, the hospital's most senior physician, to the recreation hall. He walks slowly between the rows of CS, stopping occasionally to examine a patient, his face growing grimmer with each step. Nurse Evans, he calls, beckoning you over. A word, please. You follow him to a quieter corner, though nowhere in this makeshift ward is truly quiet. We're losing this battle, he says without preamble, his voice low. This morning's count was 73 dead since midnight. The morgue is overflowing. We're using the ice house as backup storage for the bodies, and even that's nearly full. The number stuns you. 73 in just one hospital. And it's happening all across the country, all across the world. What do we do? You ask, hating how helpless you sound. Dr. Morris removes his spectacles, pinching the bridge of his nose. Keep fighting. What else can we do? But I've sent a telegram to Boston for more doctors, more nurses. God knows if any will come. Everyone's afraid. With good reason, you think, but don't say. There's something else, Dr. Morris continues. The town council is closing public gatherings, schools, churches, theaters. They're considering a mask ordinance for anyone on the streets. These measures seem sensible to you. Will it help? Perhaps if people comply, he sounds doubtful. The war news has everyone wanting to celebrate. Hard to tell them to stay home just when victory seems near. Victory? The word feels hollow with so many dying here at home, after surviving the trenches and gas attacks of France. I should get back to my patients, you say. Dr. Morris nods, replacing his spectacles. Carry on, Nurse Evans, and take care of yourself. We can't afford to lose you too. As evening approaches, you find yourself back with the older man who wanted to contact his wife. He's unconscious now. His breathing so shallow it's barely perceptible. You check his pulse, faint, irregular, minutes away from stopping altogether. You sit with him, holding his hand. No one should die alone, but in a pandemic it happens all too often. Not on your watch, not if you can help it. It's all right, you say softly, though you don't know if he can hear you. You're not alone. I'm here with you. His breathing hitches, then stops. Starts again with a rattling sound, the death rattle they taught you about in nursing school, but never quite prepared you for. Then stops for good. You close his eyes gently. Say a quick prayer and mark the time of death in your notebook. The orderlies will come for the body soon. The bed will be cleaned, disinfected, and given to another patient within the hour. The cycle continues. By the time your shift finally ends, well after dark, you're swaying on your feet with exhaustion. 8 more patients have died under your care. 15 new cases have been admitted. 4 nurses and 2 orderlies have failed to report for the evening shift, sick themselves. Most likely you should go straight to bed. Try to get what rest you can before doing it all again tomorrow. But your mind is too full, your heart too heavy. Instead, you find yourself walking outside, removing your mask to breathe the cool autumn air. The hospital grounds are quiet. Most soldiers confined to barracks to prevent spread of the disease. In the distance, the lights of the small town twinkle. Are people gathering there despite the warnings, seeking comfort in each other's company, unknowingly spreading death among themselves? You think about the progression of this pandemic, how it started small, possibly at an army camp in Kansas, then exploded across the globe, carried by troops shipping out to the war. How it seemed to recede during the summer, giving false hope, then returned with a vengeance in the fall. How it's different from other diseases you've studied. Bubonic plague with its telltale buboes, smallpox with its distinctive rash. This influenza looks like ordinary flu until suddenly it isn't. The victim's skin turning blue as they drown in their own fluids. And yet there are similarities too. The fear, the desperate search for treatments, the breakdown of normal social functions as too many fall ill too quickly. The way it strikes without regard for wealth, status or character. Some things never change. A sound breaks into your thoughts. Footsteps approaching on the gravel path. You turn to see Dr. Reynolds, his mask hanging around his neck, face haggarded in the moonlight. Couldn't sleep, he asks, coming to stand beside you. Didn't try yet, you admit. Too wound up. He nods, understanding. I keep thinking about the Black Death. How they had no idea what caused it. No real treatments. At least we have germ theory now. We know it's a virus, even if we can't see it or stop it yet. Small comfort to those dying in there, you say, gesturing toward the hospital buildings. True, he sigh heavily. But humanity survived the Black Death. We'll survive this too. Or will you, though? The question hangs unspoken between you. Reports from other cities. A grim Philadelphia burying its dead in mass graves. Cities running out of coffins. Funeral homes so overwhelmed they're stacking bodies like cordwood. My brother's a doctor in Philadelphia. Dr. Reynolds says, as if reading your thoughts. He wrote that they've lost more civilians to the flu in a month than soldiers killed in the entire war. The scale of it is almost impossible to comprehend. How does it end, you ask? Does it just burn itself out? Eventually all pandemics do. He looks up at the star-filled sky. The question is, what's left afterward? You stand in silence for a while. Two exhausted healers taking a moment's respite from the battle raging inside. The cool air feels like a blessing on your face after hours in the stifling, disease-filled hospital. I should try to sleep, you say finally. Tomorrow will be another long day. Dr. Reynolds nods. I'll walk you back. As you make your way toward the nurses' quarters, he asks, did you always want to be a nurse? The question feels strangely normal. A reminder that ordinary conversation still exists in this extraordinary time. No, you say with a small smile. I wanted to be a doctor, actually, but my father said that wasn't suitable for a woman. He was wrong, Dr. Reynolds says simply. You'd have made an excellent doctor. Maybe after the war things will change, you say, though you're not sure you believe it. Women have been doing men's jobs while they fought, running factories, driving ambulances. Saving lives, he adds, like you're doing now. You reach the nurses' quarters, pausing at the door. Good night, doctor. Good night, Nurse Evans. He hesitates, then adds, you know, I never asked, do you have family? Someone waiting for you after all this? The question catches you off guard. A sister in New York, our parents are gone. You don't add that your fiancé died at Belleau Wood just 4 months ago. Some wounds are still too fresh to touch. He seems about to say something more, but a call from across the compound interrupts. Dr. Reynolds urgent in Ward B. Duty calls, he says with a wry smile. Get some rest, Sarah, while you can. As he hurries away, you enter the quiet building. Most of the other nurses are either on night shift or already asleep. You move silently to your room, shedding your uniform, washing up with the cold water in your basin. The narrow bed welcomes you, though sleep feels far away despite your exhaustion. Your mind won't quiet, filled with images from the day. Blue-tinged faces, bloody sputum, vacant eyes, and statistics. Terrible statistics. How many dead today? How many more tomorrow? The Spanish flu, named though it is, will eventually infect 1/3 of the world's population. Between 20 and 50 million people will die more than in the Great War itself. It will reshape societies, alter economies, change how future generations think about public health. But in this moment, in your small room at Camp Devens, those are just abstract numbers. What matters are the individual lives. The young soldier who just wanted to get home to his mother. The old man who needed to apologize to his wife. The nurse who fell ill while caring for others. Each a world unto themselves. Each part of the vast, complex tapestry of human experience during a pandemic. As sleep finally begins to claim you, you wonder, as humans always have in times of great suffering, what comes next. Will this plague, like others before it, eventually recede? Will humanity learn from it, or repeat the same mistakes when the next one comes? And will you be there to witness it, or become just another statistic, another victim of the invisible enemy that has turned the world upside down? The questions follow you into uneasy dreams, where faceless patients call for help you cannot give, and masks cannot protect against the miasma of death that hangs in the air like a shroud. The world shifts one final time. Camp Devens and the Spanish flu recede into memory. You drift through darkness, then emerge into a different reality. Your name is Marcus. You're a nurse and community health advocate at a clinic in San Francisco. The year is 1985. You wake slowly, the morning light filtering through Venetian blinds, casting striped shadows across your bedroom. Unlike the cramped nurses' quarters at Camp Devens or the sparse room attached to the Moscow hospital, this space is yours, a small but comfortable apartment in the Castro district. The sheets around you are soft cotton, the mattress supportive, nothing like the rough pallets of ancient Athens or the straw-stuffed sacks of medieval Bristol. Such simple comforts taken for granted by most feel like luxuries when you remember those other lives, those other pandemics. Your alarm clock reads 6:30 a.m. Time to get up to face another day. Another day of watching young men waste away, of fighting an invisible enemy, of struggling against not just a virus but the fear and prejudice surrounding it. AIDS-acquired immune deficiency syndrome, The latest pandemic to sweep through humanity, though many refuse to call it that. Gay plague, some newspapers have called it. Divine punishment according to certain preachers, as if viruses have moral agendas, as if disease discriminates. You've seen this before, of course, in Moscow when they blamed doctors for spreading the plague. In Bristol, when they said it was God's wrath for sin. In Athens, when they abandoned all rules of religion and law in their panic. Some things never change across all the centuries you've witnessed. You shower and dress simply jeans, a button-up shirt, comfortable shoes. Your work isn't about appearances. It's about being there, being present for people who have been abandoned by so many others. The morning is cool and foggy, typical San Francisco weather. You walk the few blocks to the community clinic where you've worked for the past 3 years. Ever since the epidemic began claiming your friends, your neighbors, your community. Unlike the massive hospitals of earlier pandemics, this clinic is smaller converted Victorian house with a rainbow flag hanging beside the door. Inside it's warm and deliberately homey with comfortable chairs in the waiting room, art on the walls, plants in the windows. Morning, Marcus calls Elena from the reception desk. Her dark hair is streaked with premature grey. Her eyes tired but kind. Coffee is fresh. You'll need it. We've got a full schedule today, thanks. You pour yourself a cup, doctoring it with milk and sugar. Any overnight calls? Her expression falls slightly. Michael Peters. His partner called around 2 a.m. Pneumonia is getting worse. They're taking him to General. You close your eyes briefly. Michael, 32, former dancer. Diagnosed 6 months ago. One of the first in your support group to develop full-blown AIDS. I'll check in after my shift, you say. Anyone else? 3 new referrals, all just diagnosed, all scared out of their minds. She hands you their files. Dr. Rivera asked if you'd see them first. Do the intake counseling. Such a clinical term for what amounts to sitting with someone whose world has just imploded, whose future has suddenly contracted from decades to perhaps months, and trying to offer some glimmer of hope, some path forward. Of course, you say, taking the files. When do they arrive? First one's here now. She nods toward a young man sitting alone in the corner of the waiting room, nervously thumbing through a magazine without seeming to actually read it. James Walker, 27, got his results yesterday. You study him for a moment, thin but not yet wasted. No visible lesions. Alert eyes darting anxiously around the room. Early stage, there's still time for him. Still treatments to try. Infections to prevent more time than the thousands already gone. More options than existed even a year ago as researchers race to understand this new disease, to develop treatments, if not a cure. I'll take him to the back office. You tell Elena. Could you bring us some tea in about 10 minutes? She nods, understanding the ritual. Tea provides not just comfort, but something to do with shaking hands. Something to focus on besides devastating news and uncertain futures. Mr. Walker, you approach with a gentle smile. I'm Marcus. Would you like to come with me? We can talk privately. He stands awkward, unsure. Are you a doctor? I'm a nurse and counselor, you explain. I work with people who've just been diagnosed. Help them understand what's happening and what comes next. What comes next, he repeats hollowly, is dying. What comes next? You meet his gaze directly. Not necessarily. Not right away. There's a lot we can do. A lot you can do. That's what we're going to talk about. You lead him to the small office you use for counseling. Comfortable chairs. No desk separating you from patients, plants, and artwork, making it feel less clinical. The blinds are open, letting in soft morning light. Please sit. You gesture to a chair. I know yesterday was probably the worst day of your life. Receiving that diagnosis, there's nothing that can prepare you for it. He sits on the edge of the chair, coiled with tension. The doctor who gave me my results couldn't get me out of his office fast enough, like I was radioactive or something. Just handed me a pamphlet and said to come here. Your jaw tightens. You've heard this too many times. Medical professionals sworn to care for the sick, treating AIDS patients like pariah. It echoes the abandonment of plague victims in earlier centuries, when even family members fled from the infected. I'm sorry that happened, you say sincerely. It shouldn't be that way. Not from medical professionals who should know better. So I'm not dangerous to be around because my mom, when I told her, his voice breaks and he looks away. No, you say firmly. AIDS isn't spread through casual contact. Not by sharing a meal or a bathroom or living in the same house. We know that for certain now. The relief on his face is palpable, though tinged with hurt. Maybe you could tell my mom that. I'd be happy to talk with her, you say, and mean it. Education is half the battle in this pandemic, fighting misinformation, superstition, and fear. Why don't you bring her to our family support group? It's on Thursday evenings, he nods uncertainly. Maybe if she'll come. The next hour passes in gentle explanation, in answering questions, in outlining what treatments exist, limited though they are, and what studies he might qualify for. You discuss nutrition, stress reduction, support groups, the practical matters of living with HIV before it progresses to AIDS, the importance of hope without denial. Throughout, you watch his posture gradually relax, his breathing slow, the panic receding, replaced by a weary determination. It's a transformation you've seen before, the initial shock giving way to the human instinct to adapt, to survive, to find a path forward, even in the darkest circumstances. Elena brings tea as arranged. James wraps his hands around the warm mug like an anchor in a storm. The hardest part, he says finally, is feeling so alone, like I'm the only one going through this. You're not alone, you tell him. That's what this place is for. People who understand, who are walking the same path, come to group tonight. See for yourself. After he leaves, with appointments scheduled and pamphlets in hand, you take a moment to center yourself before the next patient arrives. This work demands everything: emotional presence, medical knowledge, unwavering compassion while offering little respite. The pandemic doesn't pause for caregiver fatigue. The day progresses in a blur of patients, phone calls, paperwork, a support group in the afternoon, where a dozen men in various stages of the disease share stories, fears, rare moments of laughter. You moderate, guide, listen, offer tissues for tears and gentle redirection when anger threatens to consume the room. By evening, you're drained but not finished. You still need to visit Michael at San Francisco General in the ward that's become known informally as the AIDS floor. Unlike earlier pandemics where all victims were housed together by necessity, these patients are isolated, not for lack of space, but because many hospital staff refuse to treat them. The elevator ride to the 6th floor feels familiar. How many hospitals have you walked through across the centuries? The technologies change, the architecture evolves, but the weight in the air, the particular quality of silence punctuated by moans and coughs, the underlying current of anxiety, these remain constant. Michael's room is at the end of the hall. You pause in the doorway, taking in the scene. He lies small and wasted in the hospital bed, oxygen tubes in his nose, an IV in one thin arm. His partner David sits beside him, reading aloud from a magazine. His voice steady despite the dark circles under his eyes. "Knock, knock," you say softly. David looks up, relief washing over his tired face. "Marcus, thank God. Tell them he needs more pain medication. They won't listen to me." You enter the room, medical advocate hat firmly in place. When did he last get something? What was it? 4 hours ago. Some codeine thing. It barely touched it. You check Michael's chart hanging at the foot of the bed. The attending physician is Dr. Harrison, who you know has a reputation for undertreating AIDS patients, claiming they're drug-seeking. "I'll find the nurse. You promise? And if necessary, I'll call Dr. Lewis from the clinic. She has privileges here." Michael stirs at the sound of your voice, eyes fluttering open. Once vibrant blue, they're now dulled with pain and medication. "Marcus," he whispers, "you came, of course I came." You take his free hand, noting the purple Kaposis seroma lesions that mar the skin. "How are you holding up?" A weak smile. "Been better. Breathing's hard. I'm going to see about getting you more comfortable," you tell him. "Just rest." It takes 20 minutes of polite but firm insistence, 2 conversations with increasingly irritated nurses, and finally a call to Dr. Lewis before Michael receives adequate pain medication. You stay until it takes effect, watching his face relax as the pain recedes. "Thank you," David says, walking you to the elevator afterward. "I don't know what we'd do without you." The way they treat us here, like we're nothing, like he deserves this. The anger in his voice is justified. You've seen it before. The way suffering is compounded by judgment, by the belief that disease is somehow a reflection of moral character. The lepers of ancient times, the Jews blamed for the Black Death, the sinners targeted as carriers of God's wrath in every pandemic throughout history. It's not right, you agree. And it's not everyone. There are good doctors and nurses here too, fighting the same battles we are. We just need to find them, work with them. David nods wearily. "I know. It's just exhausting fighting the disease and the system at the same time. Go back to him, you say gently. Try to get some rest yourself. I'll check in tomorrow. Outside the hospital, night has fallen. The city lights twinkle against the dark sky. Deceptively normal, as if thousands aren't dying, as if funerals haven't become weekly occurrences, as if an entire community isn't being decimated while much of society looks away. You think about James, newly diagnosed and terrified, about Michael fighting for each breath, about the countless others you've counseled or advocated for, sometimes just held as they cried. And you think about all those who came before the plague victims of Athens, Rome, Constantinople, Bristol, Moscow. The influenza patients gasping for breath at Camp Devens. Different diseases, different times, but the same human suffering. The same struggle to maintain dignity and compassion in the face of overwhelming loss. The walk home takes you past the Names Project workshop, where volunteers are assembling what will eventually be called the AIDS Memorial Quilt. Through the windows, you can see people working late into the night, sewing panels honoring those lost. Each panel represents a life, a story cut short. Together, they make visible the scale of a pandemic many prefer to ignore. It strikes you as something new in the history of pandemics. This deliberate act of remembrance, of refusing to let the dead become mere statistics. In Athens, the dead were piled in heaps. In Constantinople, thrown into the sea. In Bristol, buried in mass graves. In Moscow, carted away by the dozens. Here, each one is named. Each one is remembered. You stop at a small market to buy something for dinner. Too tired to cook from scratch. The young cashier smiles as she rings up your pre-made sandwich and apple. Have a good night, she says. Such a simple exchange. Such an ordinary moment. Yet you're acutely aware of how precious these mundane interactions are. How easily they can vanish in the chaos of a pandemic. You've seen streets empty of all but the dead and dying, markets closed for lack of vendors, social fabric shredded by fear and loss. At home you eat without really tasting the food, then shower away the hospital smells that cling to your clothes and skin. The hot water is a luxury that never fails to amaze you when you remember the cold sponge baths of earlier centuries, the struggle to find clean water of any temperature during plagues. Sleep comes fitfully. Your dreams a jumble of faces and places across time. Athens and Rome and Constantinople, Bristol and Moscow and Boston, and now San Francisco. Different worlds connected by the thread of your consciousness. Witnessing humanity at its most vulnerable, its most afraid. And sometimes its most compassionate. Morning arrives too soon. Another day, another battle in a war that feels endless. But as you dress, prepare breakfast. Ready yourself to return to the clinic, you realize something. AIDS won't be the last pandemic. There will be others in other times affecting other populations. The cycle will continue as it always has, testing each generation anew. What changes, what evolves, is not the existence of disease, but humanity's response to it. The growth of medical knowledge, the development of treatments and vaccines, the slow, uneven but real progress toward more compassionate care. In ancient Athens, victims were simply left to die. In medieval Bristol, the best medicine was prayer. In Moscow, doctors were blamed rather than supported. In Camp Devens, knowledge of germ theory existed, but effective treatments didn't. And now with AIDS, you have antiretroviral drugs being developed, clinical trials underway, researchers working around the clock to understand and combat the virus. You have community organizations like your clinic, providing care and support when official channels fail. You have activists demanding attention, funding, action. It's not enough, not nearly enough. Too many have died, are dying. Will die before this pandemic is controlled. But it's something evidence that humanity can learn, can grow, can do better. Even if the progress is measured in inches rather than miles, the phone rings as you're about to leave for work. It's Eleanor from the clinic. Marcus, her voice is soft, breaking. Michael Peters, he passed this morning. David called just now. The news hits like a physical blow, though not a surprising one. You'd known Michael was near the end. Still, each loss carries its own specific weight, its own particular grief. I'll call David, you say, and I'll be in shortly. After hanging up, you sit at your kitchen table, allowing yourself a moment to feel the loss. Not just of Michael, but of all those you've watched die across the centuries. The Athenian with pustules on his skin, the Roman soldier covered in plague scars, the Byzantine merchant with buboes and blackened limbs, the baker's son in Bristol burning with fever, the old man in Moscow coughing blood. The soldier at Camp Devon's turning blue as he drowned in his own fluids. And now Michael Dancer turned patient. Another casualty in humanity's endless war against infectious disease. You could despair. You could surrender to the futility of it all, the seemingly endless cycle of suffering that repeats across millennia. Instead, you stand, gather your things, and prepare to face another day. Because that's what humans do in the face of pandemics. They continue. They adapt. They help where they can. They bear witness to suffering and try, however imperfectly, to alleviate it. This pandemic, like all others, will eventually recede. AIDS will become treatable, manageable, no longer an automatic death sentence. Decades from now, new generations will know it as a chronic condition rather than a plague that decimated entire communities. But other diseases will emerge. Other challenges will arise, and humans will face them as they always have, with fear and courage, with despair and hope, with the worst and best of what humanity has to offer. As you lock your apartment door behind you, stepping out into the morning sunlight, you carry with you the memories of all those lives, all those pandemics witnessed across time. The knowledge that suffering is universal but not endless. That night always gives way to dawn. That even in humanity's darkest hours, there are those who choose to light candles rather than curse the darkness. And perhaps that's the most important lesson of all. The wisdom earned through witnessing history's worst pandemics from the inside out. That no matter how terrible the disease, how overwhelming the suffering, how complete the societal breakdown, humanity endures, adapts, rebuilds, remembers, and sometimes learns. You walk toward the clinic, toward those who need you today, carrying this quiet certainty within you. A certainty born not of ignorance or denial, but of having seen the very worst that pandemics can bring, and knowing that even those pass eventually, that life continues in some form afterward. It's a perspective few can claim, this long view, across centuries of human suffering and resilience. A perspective that brings, if not comfort, then at least context to the present moment. You reach the clinic, pausing for a moment before entering. Inside are people who need what you have to offer. Your knowledge, your compassion, your presence, your unique understanding of what it means to live through a pandemic. To face mortality, not in the abstract, but in the immediate. Taking a deep breath, you open the door and step inside, ready to continue the work that connects you to all those healers who came before in Athens, in Rome, in Constantinople, in Bristol, in Moscow, in Boston. Different times, different diseases, but the same essential task. To bear witness, to offer comfort, to fight back against the darkness with whatever tools are available. And to remember always that dawn follows even the longest night. As you fall asleep tonight, nestled in your comfortable bed so different from the pallets and cotzes of earlier times, perhaps you'll dream of those other lives, those other pandemics. But let them be distant now, historical rather than immediate. Let your body relax, your mind drift, your breathing slow and deepen. For you are safe in this moment, warm, protected. The struggles of past and present pandemics, releasing their hold as sleep embraces you, carrying you gently into dreams, where humanity's long complicated dance with disease gives way to visions of healing, of connection, of the quiet courage that sustains us through our darkest hours. Sleep now. Rest. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, its own opportunities to make a difference. But for now, just breathe, just be. Let the weight of centuries lift from your shoulders as consciousness fades and sleep deep. Peaceful sleep carries you away,